not married and they're doing this incredible.
Well, there's a myriad of things. I think first of all, we have to go back to writer. You are very well known for teaching skills. Your students speak a whole lot about you.
Miss Nigeria competition.
I said, let's pick them up, let's take them back to Nigeria, and let's teach them a different kind of job.
Strong women are not simply born. We are forged through the challenges of life. With each challenge, we grow mentally and emotionally. We move forward with our heads held high and a strength that cannot be denied. A woman who has been through the storm and survived. We are warriors. From that lovely quote I got off from Pinterest, I want to welcome you to today's show, The Woman on NTA. It's a show that showcases personalities, and like I read out, it's a show that brings out the strongest of women within our society, especially here in Nigeria. Today I have another special lady who has touched several lives in different forms. I'll get to have her unfolded, but that will be right after now. Don't go away. If you're just joining us, you're right on time for a lovely show with a lovely woman who has moved around different aspects of life, but basically who has touched life in ways that even you and I would wish we were able to do. Her name is Honorable Mrs. Rosemary Osikoya. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, ma'am.
I intentionally didn't want to start mentioning all the things positions you've covered, because I intend to, in the course of the discussion, unfold them. But let me start immediately. I knew you when you were commissioner in Kogi State. At the time, commissioner for education, science, education, and technology. But I also know before then you were commissioner for environment
and natural resources.
Environment and natural resources. Yeah. But your voice, when you were the commissioner for education, for me, it was resounding. I watched you in a seminar, the way you presented your dream for the educational sector. It got me thinking, why is this woman not my minister? Tell me, did you study education?
Interestingly, at that point was when I studied education.
Really?
Yes. I was already in office as a commissioner for education, and I needed to ask questions. I'm a project manager, so you would like to find out the substance about the sector where you are, because as a project manager you could work anywhere. And my first degree is mathematics, so I'm just wired to solve problems. But then to solve problems you need to have more of the details. So I asked this question: what are your goals? What are your outcomes? What are you expecting? What is the scope of your interest? And a whole lot of all that. And I wasn't getting the answers. So I thought at that point, now I need to know what the sector is about, because the deliverables should be what keeps you in focus. And so I think at that time I meet the stakeholders within the sector, and there was this very interesting young man who works for the National Teachers Institute at that time, and everybody called him Yellow. I think he's no longer in Kogi State, but he's fair skinned, so everybody called him Yellow. And then we have this conversation, and then he got me into, hey, this is what we do in NTI. Why not come and be part of our program? So he gave me this complete set of, this is postgraduate diploma in education. Interestingly, I got interested. And I find I could relate with all the diverse fields you have there: psychology, philosophy, and history. All of them were interesting reads. So I just immersed myself into that. And I think it made a couple of inline then. Oh, this is the commissioner who's studying PGD at the time, she's in there. And so for me, it is practical. You could see the sector, you could engage the issues, and then I have so much to run them. Okay, could we do this? So it's like a teamwork. So that's about it. So I actually got the PGD in education while I was commissioner for education.
That's lovely, because it reminds me of a man who bought a car
but he couldn't exactly drive. So when he threatened his driver, that one packed him right on the highway and said, "Sir, if driving is that easy, why don't you come and do it? You know, if you're going to be in charge, you should know at least to a certain degree what's
functional
the
knowledge
yes,
of
what you need to do." But tell me, how was it like for you, you know, managing the sector at the time after you studied it?
I think the big part about education, very unique and different from every other sector, is education is a bit of everything. Otherwise, you will find that you are narrow-minded. So I find at that time in policy, you have to bring in a lot of everything that comes from behind. You have to bring in a lot of management. You have to bring in a lot of project management precisely. You have to bring in a lot of monitoring and evaluation. Then you have to bring in a lot of policy analysis. So I find that being everywhere before that time sort of make it all very real, very relevant, and then it makes it interesting.
You know, so a little bit of everything just like you
yeah.
said, is taught.
And being a mother helps.
Yes.
But I think as we grew up, we could relate with that part of us, that
Definitely.
in every one of us as a woman, your first calling is to be a
To be
teacher.
a teacher, yes. No, you talked about first calling, and I remembered your first degree in mathematics. I knew when you said it, I needed to shove it on the table, but I ain't gonna work because I keep wondering, what is the problem? Why do you need to study mathematics? All of us run away from it. Was it your parents that forced you or something?
I don't think they have any clue how I got into mathematics.
Because mathematics, we consider it not a career for anybody at all, and less of all a woman.
You know, to agree with you, when I was 7, I served in Gombe State, and I came up with this beautiful CDS idea. You know, in Gombe State, how you plot when you're in the north those days, you plot how to escape. And then so when somebody tells you, you have to complete your service here. And so grudgingly, you sit through these your CDS lectures, community development issues. And then somebody just spit in this idea. So I thought, oh, northern girls, we don't like mathematics. Girls in generally don't. So let's do this mathematics competition for girls. And everybody were like, who studied maths in school? Why would they do like a whole lot of all that? But then that became like a platform. So, and it made me enjoy my service here, because we go around Gombe State advocating for girls to do mathematics, and there's a reward tied to that. And it worked out so very well. So I agree with you. Mathematics is not likely to be the girls' first choice.
So what made you study?
First, I think my father had an idea that I should study medicine. And you know, those days it's easy. They said if you are smart, they just put you in the sciences. If you are not so smart, you should go to the arts. And people think I was smart. So I find myself one day in the sciences. And then I think it was after sciences, I went to a public school, government, girls secondary school, Tafabalewa way it is. And then it was during A-levels. Everybody thought I was a lawyer, because they all feel you speak English so well. I don't know how they think so anyway. I think until A-levels, some people think I would make a very good lawyer, that I could argue intelligently and I could read all that. But here I find myself in University of Jos. And what did I ask for? I asked for medicine. And I didn't have physics, because welcome to schooling in the public schools in the north. And at that time, there are probably other schools, but the first time I saw a physics laboratory was 3 months to our WAEC exam. That's when the school unveiled the laboratory. So I had a pass in physics. So of course it didn't work for medicine. And then I was to have some other thing. And I don't know where the idea of maths came from, but I think I was just inclined to accept maths. And everybody thought it was crazy. And I thought, hey, maybe it will just make you think more. But I think we had this professor, Liverpool, then I think a librarian also, and then he said the risk with studying mathematics is you're going to become too intelligent, but that mathematics is going to improve your capacity to reason, your capacity to think. And he said the unfortunate part is at some point you will think everybody else is stupid because they don't think the way you think. And he said you're going to become an abnormal person in the world because your capacity to reason would have been so heightened. And then you were going to find that, especially if you are in this part of the world, that you're going to be an odd one out. We didn't believe him. But I think years later, I'm tempted to incline. I'm inclined to sort of agree that mathematics have a way of sharpening your capacity to reason and think. You are more like cause and effect kind of person, outcome and consequences kind of person. And that doesn't come to the average person. But you see, after you have to study numbers, which is the basics of everything we do, you look at life differently and you have to learn to adjust. I think that's the consequences, like Professor Liverpool warned.
All this you're saying, I'm tempted to agree with you, but as soon as I was going to do that, I had my mind, throwing down memory lane, algorithm, base,
Complex
algebra.
numbers.
Those classes. I don't want to talk about them now, but I'm still going to pick on what you said later on. Let me get to finance. Before I move away from your being in Kogi State, how was it like being a commissioner? I always wondered.
I think it was opportunity to walk the talk. Like I said, my second degree is in political science, international relations and strategic studies. And then coming from my days, the days I was in University of Jos were very political. We have an opinion on everything that happens in politics. And then you also have this shot, you sit down in the evening and then all you're doing is analyzing politics and a whole lot of things that could have been, where this set of Nigerians that were very hopeful about the country that could be. So I think being in a appointive government position was opportunity to walk the talk. So for me, it was a position of great responsibility. And especially at that time, with my sort of personal ideology about issues, you've heard so much about bad leadership, you've heard so much about abuse of office, and then I was coming from a civil society kind of background, and then you've seen examples before you of people who got there and they were not so good examples after they have left. And then unfortunately for me, I had this set of very good mentors. I had mentors who were watching me from outside, and I had mentors who themselves were role models, and I wouldn't like to call some of their names here. So that was for me a checker, that if you mess up while you are there, there is no community to go back to, because the community you're coming from are not going to be people who will forgive you so easily. And then being a humanitarian and a development person at heart, I think it was a check. And then having my immediate family also, you have this conversation where your children are holding you accountable to your faith. You have this conversation, and so it's like it didn't leave any room for me to do anything outside the shared values of the group I was coming from.
That's good to know, and I want to believe that a lot of us who are in public posts, I am not, but I also find myself, a role model for a lot of people, just sitting here and talking. So we'll be able to, pick up from what you said and remember that someone is watching, and that person will want to see you walk your talk. And moving on that, I see you walking your talk, you've gone beyond just being a political appointee and all of that. You're also doing something that I quite like to do. That is lending a helping hand to younger people. Recently, you did something on creativity and all of that. I wanted to be part of it, but I couldn't for some reasons.
I have the misfortune of seeing children who may never go to school. The misfortune of seeing girls who, for just a loaf of bread, could pull down their pants. Find people who said they have been to school and yet they could not speak a word of English. And it's like the whole world continues as if this isn't a problem. And it keeps me awake. And then I think that for me was my call into NGO world. So in 2020, we piloted a project we call the Young Entrepreneurs Club. And that is more or less, how do you make policy work? Because the law says before a child finishes JSS 3, the child should have functional skill for livelihood. If you interpret that, it means you should have skills to survive with. And I get to find that the more you mix with women and you ask them, what could you do? A couple of us only cook our traditional food. What are the importance of every of the ingredients you're using? So this functional knowledge of our everyday life was lacking. And then if you are familiar with COVID-19, we got stuck because there are no eateries anyway. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of us had no idea how to survive. And so that tells me, why not begin to promote functional vocational skills? Okay. And so we tried the Young
alongside the regular
Club.
curriculum.
Exactly, because actually, again, that's the second disconnect I found. That people think you have to do one before the other, and not thinking that both of them go together. And so I thought, no, that is a big gap. Everybody who thinks that is wrong. You are to learn the skills as you are learning your maths and English. Maths and English, it does not serve an end in themselves. They are just a means to an end. And then you find when people talk about functional literacy, people think You should learn to read and write in non-formal education. But somehow they do not connect it with how you are going to survive. So we started that campaign, and thank God it was a success. So FCT gave us a classroom in Government Secondary School, Piakasa. And in the second year, towards the end of that, we found another link. Why are people not interested in skills? Why do you tell somebody you could learn skills? Well, by the way, some government agencies have told you at one time or the other that they have to pay you to learn skills. And then the irony is, in some places, people want to learn without being paid, and there's nobody to provide them access. So we thought, why not connect all of that? So we came up with the School Sewing Championship, and we thought, piloting in FCT, create a prize, create an incentive for schools, bring everybody together, and then let them compete among their peers and break down the fact of whether you're a public school or you're a private school, whether you are in formal sector or non-formal sector, and see if that would be, and that is what we flagged up. Our sincere appreciation to the Minister of State for Education. He flagged that up on the 19th of January. So for everyone in FCT as a pilot state, it's you can actually pick a form, and then you can open into a competition, and the enrollment is going on. So the fact is, you can win a prize that is more than 500,000 for yourself as an individual. You can win a
Any
prize
space for adults?
The adult that is not more than 20 years old. Yes, there will be a space for that person. And you know, the interesting part I like about that is when we met with the traditional rulers across the area council, and each of them will tell us that their area council is coming back with a prize. And I thought, wow, this is beautiful. Nigerians across different divides, and now, as curious as I am, if you have this open competition and you give a child in school, by the way, garment making is a WAEC subject.
Yes.
Clothing and textile is a WAEC and an eco subject. So it means here, if you are in school and you are taking that as one of your entrepreneurship subjects, it now provides a yardstick to see which school is actually creating creative innovators or studentpreneurs. Because if you can sew and you are in school, how much money have you made?
And it's not gender-based, right?
No, it's open to everybody.
Okay, so whether you're a man or a woman, you can actually contest.
So you think you can sew? Let's see what you can do.
It's good. Now, I want to really, take you back to your early days. We've talked a lot about your achievements and all of it. I know we can't exhaust it, but I keep wondering, whenever I see you and listen to you, I see a perfect woman, but I also know there's nobody that is perfect. What has been that stumbling block in your life you've been able to redirect into a stepping stone?
When I was growing up, I'm from Kogi State, and I come from a very rural part of Kogi State. People have often tell me that when you think of the galas, you think of these people
people that eat gala.
No, in fact, you are kind, because most people, when I was growing up, they will tell you, oh, your people are always in the lower rung of the society. They are either pump attendants, or they are in the police, or they are in all of that. So, and I quickly tell them, with much sense of humility, I'm one of those who got away. Because I remember when I was growing up, there was no hope of a girl child receiving education at that time. And I remember then, like my mother of blessed memory, her highest qualification was a primary 7. For whatever at that time, there seemed not to be much encouragement for women. And I know the Igala women, my mother being one of them, is one of these very hardworking person. How did I get away? My mother's dream was to be a nurse. Circumstances and life conspired against her, and her dreams did not come to pass. But she did something which set for me a model of what every woman should be. My mother devoted her life to me. And so she told me things she never told people. It's like every daughter is the aspiration and the hope of her mother. In my own case, it was true. So there's this woman who tells you you have to break every barrier. There's this woman who told you, I wish I had been this, but you have to go beyond what I would have been. So when even her peers were telling her, you can imagine the crazy thing I heard those days. I heard somebody tell my mother, if you allow her to go to school, she will be too intelligent, she won't get a husband. I mean, of all things to tell a woman. And then you are saying that to, and I remember what she would answer them. She would tell them and said, in the hospital where she works, she was a medical records clerk at one point in her life. And then she said in that hospital, she sees female doctors. And then she sees nurses and a whole lot of all that she also would have wanted to have been a nurse. And then she said, if she wants to go to school, let her be. Like she told me before she died, I was the fulfillment of her dreams. And then, so I think that sense of humility had kept me, that there was nothing special about me. But the fact that a woman practically lived her life wanting to at least nurture one. And I remember my very earliest memory of her. And then is of a woman who you wake up sometime in the middle of the night or very early in the morning, and there's this woman kneeling by your bed, and all she's praying is, my daughter's life will be different from mine. She will get this. So I think with every sense of responsibility, and I carried that with a lot of burden, would be you are the aspiration of the dream of somebody. And I think one of the fulfilling things in my life was before the time she passed about 7 years ago, was she telling me, you are everything I wanted to be. And then she told me, she said, I am fulfilled. So I think that for me, it's what sets the tone for the rest of my life. She took time to drill me in humility. And then she taught me respect. You know, we live in a society today where it's easy to piss off everybody and look down on them. But my mother raised me up with this consciousness that every child has this measure of respect. And that wherever you meet in people, and like I told somebody the other day, she taught me to tie 2 wrappers when I was less than 10 years old. And then, like I tell somebody, I told my daughter when she was getting to cook, I said, I said, you know, before I was 10, I had to stand on a gas cooker. And then I had to reach to a pot to turn food for over 10 people. And then, even though it came out, all my semo came out with all the lumps and all of that, my mother was excited because she has a daughter who could make that, you know. So I said, those were values.
Say, okay,
so you could see the kind of values and retention I have.
I know if I leave you for a whole day, you still talk about her with so much love. It shows how much has impacted on you. And I'm wondering, are you doing the same for your family? Because you said it's easy for people to get cocky at a point. It's also easy for us women to lose our family value when we begin to rise in the society. Are you still in touch with the basis?
Very, very much in touch with the basis. I think...
How do you connect with your work life and your family life?
The only brief period of my life where I was much, to a great extent, disconnected from home was when I was in public office. Like my husband would say, we've borrowed you to Kogi State so you could go there and then you work. And then again, I am a very private person. And so I find I could devote myself. But having said that, I think I see myself primarily that my major responsibility in life is my home. To be a good wife to my husband, to be a good mother to my children. And I think that forms the trusts of my focus. That at the end of the day, I would need to first have succeeded at home. And being my children's friend, and being their teacher and disciplinarian, all whipped into one. I think it is that. But again, I wouldn't be the one to say whether I succeed or not. So I think it will be my children who would be able to tell whether or not
your own
I am.
story. That's how it works. And then I would like to also know, beyond work life, beyond family life, there is a you life and your me time. What forms your me time? How do you unwind? How do you relax?
One, I love to cook and entertain. And so I realized that when I was growing up, the diet in my father's house is a bit very straightforward. You are either swallowing, we call it, you're either swallowing something, and then those days rice could be very seasonal, and then the way that everybody cook whatever they cook would leave you with eating biscuits. So I grew up liking snacks because most times I don't like some of the food that they cook. So I start fantasizing about what food could be like. And then when you mix in with people, and then when you study, read books across the world, I became more interested in certain things. So that for me sets the reason to why I picked just an avid interest. So yes, I read, I love to travel, and then I love to read a lot. And then I love cartoons though, for crying out loud.
Welcome to the club, Tom and
So
Jerry.
I think in my most relaxing time is just give me anything cartoon.
Okay.
It relaxes me a lot much. And then the other thing I do for pastime is I have a very cordial relationship with my maker. I love to fellowship with God. So I love this thing about music, about just spending time reflecting about issues and then just praying about it. And then so that for me sets about why I said maybe I'm a very private person.
It's good. It's good really, because the Bible says when you sing praises, it's another way of praying to God, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I want us to pray to God now, and you will be the praise singer. I'll just let you sing for us.
Okay, one song I have heard in recent time, it's a song that actually intrigued me. I have a lot of favorites, but there's this one I like. ẹ wá wọ bá wa o. 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 Jésù lọ́ba wa o. Jésù lọ́ba wa o. Jésù lọ́ba wa o. Jésù lọ́ba wa o.
I know there's a Jesu there, which is Jesus. What does the
Yes.
rest mean?
I think it means come and behold our Lord. And then the second part is Jesus is our Lord.
Okay. So on that note, I want to say thank you so much. Well, we have been having this lovely time out with my guests, but just before I go, I needed to listen to what Maya Angelou said. She said, "You may encounter many defeats, but you must not be defeated. In fact, it may be necessary to encounter the defeat so you can know who you are, what you can rise from, how you can still come out of it." That's from Maya Angelou. And on that note, I say thank you for being with us, and thank you so wonderfully for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me here today.
All right? Please, whatever you do, be strong, and don't forget, your vote is your voice. Let's vote wisely.